Hi everyone, welcome to our workshop on understanding autism and social communication differences. My name is Marwa and I'm a speech and language therapist working in Ealing Early Start team.
Hi everyone, and my name is Zoe. I'm the Early Start SEND and Inclusion worker.
Okay, so let's get started. Right, so the plan for today is to understand more about autism and social communication differences, to understand the potential signs and traits in young children, and to know how autism is assessed in Ealing Borough, and also to know where to go for more support. Okay.
So we're thinking about what is autism. Autism is a lifelong developmental difference that means that people communicate and interact with the world in a different way. 1 in 100 people are autistic, and there are around 700,000 autistic adults and children in the UK. We know that a diagnosis of autism is given based on several traits. And today, further in this presentation, we're going to look at what some of those traits may be and how you may see them in your children. We'll be exploring that further. We know that autism is a lifelong developmental difference. It is not something that you grow out of. If you have met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person, but the same is true of everyone, autistic or not. Also, just to note that during this presentation, we will be using identity first language, where we'll be saying an autistic person or an autistic child. The reason for this that most autistic adults that have been asked, this is what they prefer. Of course, this is individual to everyone, but we'll be going with identity first language based on that information we have. You'll see a link below for a video, Amazing Things Happen. It's a really nice video to watch about seeing autism through the eyes of an autistic person. You won't be able to watch it during this presentation, but you can pause and we will have a link to it. So what are social communication differences? So this is social communication differences is what you may have heard referred to for your child at the moment if no diagnosis of autism is yet to be received, or maybe your child will get no formal diagnosis. Social communication differences are differences communicating with and relating to others, and differences experiencing the world around them.
A child may play in a different and equally valuable way, such as doing the same thing over and over again, rather than engaging in a varied and imaginative play. So we've got different types of play cultures, and play develops differently. One of the things that therapists and doctors look at when diagnosing autism is a child's play. These are the different types of play that neurodivergent children might engage in. So I guess a few examples, we've got parallel play, and this is when when a child plays alongside another child or adult. And we've got schemas, so this is when they're exploring things with the same actions, such as rotating things, closing things, moving things. We've got sharing novel finds. So this is when they share exciting things with someone. We've got object personification. This is when they assign feelings to an object. Yeah, and of course we've got the again and again play, when the child is enjoying doing the same thing again and again. Right, so we have differences in learning and thinking. So a lot of autistic children do really well when there is a clear and consistent routine. They may create their own routines to help themselves feel regulated and help the environment feel more predictable, such as moving a certain way around the room. Um, and they may be very visual in their learning style, and this may be a strength of theirs, such as noticing the visual details in scenes or pictures.
So differences in speech, language, and communication. We know that there's a wide spectrum in the language skills of autistic children. And it will be different for every autistic child. These are some of the traits that may be familiar to you or that you may see. Echolalia, which is where children may repeat things that they hear. Children may also repeat phrases that they hear, either immediately after they hear it, or sometimes it can be later on, and it may feel like it's just kind of they've randomly picked this phrase and are repeating it sometime later. It's a valuable form of autistic communication, so we should respond to this and acknowledge it. We can respond to echolalia by either saying it back, acknowledging it with a nod, a smile, and really letting them know that we have heard it, and try and find meaning under what they are saying, and saying it back to them. Children may learn language in a different way, so chunks of language rather than repeating single words back to us. It may be a repeated phrase, or a chunk. 80% of autistic people learn language through something called Gestalt language processing. I hope I've said that correctly. This is when children learn language instead of single words. So one of the first things we hear is children copying intonations, patterns or tones of voice. So this may be where you hear a raised tone of voice or a quiet low tone. Again, we do not want to ignore this. This is the first stages of communication for lots of our children, so we can acknowledge it by repeating it back to them, recognizing the sounds, repeating the sounds, or nodding, looking at them, saying yes, letting them know that we have heard them. Autistic children may develop their language or communication at a different rate. We know that some children may not begin to use language until later on. Some children may be non-speaking. They may use signs, symbols, or technology to communicate. Some autistic children are non-speaking or minimally speaking, and they'll use signs or symbols to communicate. And some autistic children may use spoken language and can understand instructions, have conversations, and tell stories. Some children may repeat what other people say, but maybe in a different context. So I know we've covered lots of things there, but there's not one set way. Children really may take elements of that. They may not respond to their name consistently, and they may have a different intonation pattern or tone. Some autistic people or children may have a literal understanding of language. So, for example, they may find it difficult to understand metaphors, like it's raining cats and dogs, or phrases like break a leg. Even autistic children, it can take them maybe longer to understand even like jokes or sarcasm, and things like that, because again, it's very literal. It's as they hear those words and what that meaning would usually be. So we've got differences in social interaction. So autistic children may interact socially in a different way. They may not pick up on hidden social cues, example, following the rules of a conversation that you have to take turns. I speak, you respond, vice versa. They may not understand body language, eye contact, or tone of voice. You may see differences in lots of your children with how they're interacting with people around them. They may um, need help to understand the rules of conversation, like I was saying, those turn-taking rules, that we have to pause and listen to what another person has to say. It may be that they don't realize that they need to go to an adult to communicate that maybe they need help or that they want you to engage with them. It may be something you have to initiate to begin with and teach them those social skills and how we interact, and that we need a person to interact with. They may miss hidden social cues, social rules that aren't taught but that people are just expected to understand, like greetings. Children with autism may have difficulty understanding and using body language, facial expressions, eye contact, and tone of voice. They may find it difficult to interpret how someone is feeling based on these clues. Autistic children may also have difficulties in initiating interacting with others. Again, we touched on that, and that's something that we may have to take the lead on as the adults in their lives. But yeah, we're just touching on what you may see right now, and in a later workshop is when we'll be giving some guidance on what you can do to try and encourage and support these things. Okay, we're going to look at sensory differences. So lots of children, autistic children, will have sensory differences. Some of these may sound familiar to you. So to begin, we're going to be thinking about all of the senses, and there is more than the initial 5 senses that most of us will think of: our taste, our hearing, sight, touch, and smell. We're going to introduce 3 more senses to think about: our which I can not say very well, proprioception, interception, and vestibular. So I'll go on to say a little bit more about them. So our taste is, of course, through our mouth and tongue, what we can taste. We often describe autistic children are often described as fussy eaters. This is often due to sensory sensitivities that they may have. They may only like particular foods. Often what we hear from lots of parents may be dry, crunchy foods, maybe foods of a plain beige colour, not so many kind of wet or lumpy textures. We also see autistic children may eat inedible objects. This is something we refer to as pica, where it may be that our children may not necessarily want to eat lots of different foods, but they may like to eat sand or mud, or a variety of different textures or objects that are non-edible. As I mentioned before, children may show a preference to certain textures or colours. They may want to have food presented in a certain way. They may not want things maybe cut up, or they may not want things touching on the plate. And they may have difficulty actually managing the mealtime setting. So separate from the food itself, it may be that it's actually really difficult for them to sit in their chair or sit at a table and focus for the time, for a mealtime to actually eat. So that's taste. Hearing may be where children are avoiding noisy places or really like loud noises. So it can be that our children are hyper or hypo. So maybe that they're oversensitive or undersensitive to particular senses, and this doesn't stay the same. This can change always. So it might be that your child loves really loud noises and thrives in it, or it may be that your child's very sensitive and maybe they cover their ears and they really don't like big, loud, unexpected noises, like if you put the Hoover on or the hand dryer in a public toilet. Things like that really may upset your child and be too overwhelming for them. Sight, so enjoys holding um, objects really close to their eyes, really watching things really close up, maybe like a flashing toy. It might be that they really want to see the wheels on the car really close up, moving around, again, really looking at something close up and really intently. Touch is where children may react strongly when touched, or to particular feelings and textures. You may see this through their clothing, that they have particular clothes that they like to wear depending on the materials. It might be that the tag of a inside the trousers is too much for them to tolerate. And yeah, they'll show preferences to that, or maybe it's that they don't like to have clothes on at all, what it may be. But again, yeah, thinking about the sense of touch. Smell, where autistic children can be sensitive to particular smells, or so again, it could be something, maybe a smell that we haven't even really noticed, but you may see that your child's getting upset about something or overwhelmed, and it could be actually that smell of something cooking, or that you've opened the fridge. And again, the opposite to that is where they may not notice smells too much, so they could go into an environment of something that smells really quite strong, maybe quite bad, but they don't seem to be bothered by that. Again, they maybe just don't notice that that smell is not particularly strong to them. And then going on to the three maybe less familiar senses, where we've got our proprioception, which is awareness of body movement and positioning. So this is where, again, awareness, a child maybe want to be really close to you, or they might want to be far away from you. Again, it's that awareness of where they are themselves. And then we have interperception, which is awareness of feelings in the body. And this is, for example, maybe the feeling of hunger. So we know a lot of autistic children may not recognize what that feeling is or feel it, again, which can make those meal times and eating really difficult because they don't understand what it is to feel hunger. Maybe they don't understand what it is to feel thirsty. And again, it can relate to different emotions as well. Thinking about, they don't understand that they're actually feeling angry now, that they're feeling upset, which can mean that it's harder to manage those emotions. Also pain, we can see that actually autistic children can have a really high pain threshold, so they may, walk outside in bare feet over stones that to lots of us would be really uncomfortable and actually painful, but to some autistic children, they won't necessarily recognize that feeling, or they'll be undersensitive to it. So they're quite happy to be in what we feel is quite uncomfortable. They're okay with that. And that is our interperception sense. Then we've got our vestibular sense, which is the system that regulates balance and body control. It's located in our inner ears, and it helps us regulate our sense of balance and body control. So some children can be oversensitive to this, which is where their response to motion can be quite extreme. So this may be in the form of like motion sickness, that could be maybe why they don't travel, and they could get car sickness, and things like that. It can be particularly difficult for an autistic person to actually really tolerate this. And they might not know that they're feeling sick because of it, and they have that uncomfortable feeling of feeling nauseous, but maybe they can't express that to us. The sensation varies from person to person, and it may be difficult to determine the cause of it. Is it anxiety? Is it the motion sickness? Or it may be that they're undersensitive, so they have a need to seek out experiences to boost body movement. So without this additional movement, the balance a person feels comfortable with may not be achievable. So this may appear as hyperactivity, so a desire to be moving all the time, to eagerly accept experiences like go on to fairground rides. They want you to swing you really high on a swing or really fast, tumbling over, maybe climb really high, hanging from things. All of these activity that will really stimulate the senses. So that's just touching on all of the senses. We do know that autistic children need and use sensory input to regulate themselves, which means to keep themselves calm. For example, a child may rock their body and they may flap their hands when they're excited or maybe when they're angry or upset. And this is a way of regulating and releasing that emotion. And it is called stimming. So you may see that in lots of your children. This can look different to other people, but it's not something you should stop. It's something that is a way of releasing those feelings and that energy that your child may have, and it will help your child to feel calm. So it is important to allow them to have that time to stim. Sometimes occupational therapists can provide things to help children regulate. So they may give them a special seat to fit on, a moving cushion, something like that, a fidget toy, chewy toys. All of these things can help your children really to focus and to regulate themselves. Some autistic children have sensory differences that can make it hard for them to go about daily tasks. So, for example, to use a bus because it's bright lights, maybe it's too noisy on there, maybe there's some strange smells. If a child's occupational therapy needs impact them on a daily living and they have difficulties with skills of daily living, for example, using a knife and fork, dressing themselves, using the toilet, then the occupational therapy team can help you with those sort of daily life skills. And their contact details or how to be referred, we will share that at the end of this presentation. We've just got this slide up here with a little bit more detail for you to maybe pause and have a little read through. I am aware that it was quite a lot of information that I spoke through with you, and a lot of it may be quite relevant to you and your child. For more information, you can go on to Sensoryscape to get more information on this. And we also do run a separate sensory workshop where we go into more detail as well. But it was just as an introduction to you, so you're kind of aware of those feelings that your children may be experiencing. Thank you.
I just realised here we have a video about experiencing sensory overload from the child's perspective, and you can pause the video now. We have it linked in the description box below, and have a watch of the video. It's really interesting to see, and it can even be quite emotional for some parents. And then okay, so we're going to talk about the differences in emotions. So many children with autism manage and express their emotions in a different way. They may need help to tell you how they are feeling and know how to calm themselves when they are upset. For example, if they get frustrated or upset, they may start feeling frustrated for quite a long time, and they may not seek comfort. And they may not seek comfort from other people as much. It helps to tune into the toys or activities that do help them feel calm and use those to distract or soothe them when they are upset. So some differences are they may have interoception differences, such as how they experience hunger, thirst, pain, temperature, anxiety. I know that Zoe just went through this on the previous slide. They may express and regulate emotions by stimming. So as Zoe had mentioned, this is repetitive sensory movements that help them to regulate and calm themselves, such as rocking, jumping, or flapping their hands. And as Zoe mentioned, we really don't want you to discourage this, as that's what helps them to regulate themselves. And they may not have an easy way to communicate their feelings, which is why sometimes we might use visuals such as like pictures or some devices. And we will go into this much more in the part 2 of the workshop, which is how to support these differences. And they may need to have help to communicate their feelings and to learn what helps them to calm. They may not seek comfort as much, and it does depend on the bond with other people. Okay, so they may find it tricky to identify how someone else is feeling based on social cues, or they might be hyper empathetic. So hyper empathy is when an autistic person feels others' emotions as though it is their own. So they can become very upset when somebody else is upset. And then we have rejection sensitivity dysphoria. So this is common in autism and ADHD, and it is the perception of real and imagined rejection. And due to both the neurodiverse profiles receiving more negative attention, they develop a sensitivity to rejection, and so it may lead to emotional outbursts. Um, and it is poorly researched, but it is becoming much more recognized. And I have linked in the description just something that you can go on to have more of a read of it if you are interested. Okay, so here we have another video. Please can you pause this video and find the link for this in the description below. It's really, really interesting because an autistic person will look at the black circle and therefore they may miss facial cues and expressions. And we know that individuals with social and emotional vulnerabilities may find social attention difficult. So, such as looking at faces or hearing speech sounds, and they might focus more on non-social aspects such as hair and clothing.
Okay, so having gone through some of the differences that we may see in an autistic child, or those with social communication differences, we would like you to maybe pause or take a moment to think about your own children, how those differences may present in your child. So thinking about talking, which is maybe how your child might communicate. Do they use words? Do they take those chunks of language that we mentioned? Do they repeat what you say? Or maybe they're using signs or gesture. So really have a think about their social interaction. Um, will they, how do they interact? Will they come to you? Or do they need that adult support to initiate an interaction? Their emotions. Again, thinking about what we've touched on in relation to emotions and sensory sensitivities, how that may look in your child, and their eating and drinking. I guess just touching on that is usually related to a child's sensory sensitivities rather than them just being a fussy eater. There may be more to it, so really trying to look at that. Um, different responses to light, sound, and touch. Again, thinking back to the senses that we spoke about. Play again. Um, all of the different types of play. Play doesn't just come in one form, but again, typically there are styles of play that autistic children tend to feel more comfortable with, and that we tend to see. So really observe your child and think about how they are playing. And again, their understanding of language, maybe their understanding of you may use sign with them, or you may have introduced some visuals, but think about how your child understands and what supports them to understand. Okay, so causes of autism. The big thing we want you to take from here is that autism is not caused by anything. Okay, it's nothing, anyone or anything that's happened. It's not caused by anything. Therefore, there is no cure. And autism is largely genetic. Okay, but you will have possibly heard many things. Maybe you have done some of your own research on Google, which could bring you onto any kind of random sites that may not be correct information. Autism is not caused by diet, by parenting, by vaccines, by emotional deprivation, or the way a person has been brought up. So yeah, please keep that in mind. It is not caused by anything. There is strong evidence to suggest that autism can be caused by a variety of physical factors, all of which can affect brain development. It is not due to any of those things that we've named out there. Thank you. These some myths that you may have come across, or maybe there's some things that you will hear in the future, but we just want you to be aware of them and know what is correct. Having the MMR vaccine can cause autism. There has been no evidence to say this. There's no recognised link between the vaccine and autism. Changing my child's diet will cause autism. Again, there is no significant evidence of a link between diet and autism. A child can acquire autism later on in life. Autism is a developmental condition and it cannot be acquired later on in life. Autism cannot be identified in children under 2. Again, this is not the case. Children under the age of 2, they can receive a diagnosis of autism, and we can start seeing some traits or characteristics of autism in children under 2. Autism can be cured. Again, a myth. Autism is not something that can or that needs to be cured. Okay. Instead, we should celebrate the neurodivergence of autistic people. There is also a link that we will put in the description of this video with some more information about the MMR vaccine, because I know it's something that is quite commonly parents hear about or is thought of, but there is an additional link there of a study that shows that there is no recognised link between the vaccine and autism. So just for reading, if it's something you were interested in. Thank you. So we can see the pictures here about what we may think autism looks like. So it's often spoke about as a spectrum, and thinking about it as a linear straight line, that you are not so autistic, less autistic, to more or very autistic. This is not the case. It doesn't just run on a straight line like that. As we previously said, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person, the same as everyone with autism or without. People change always. Children and adults, we don't stay the same. We don't remain the same person. We're always developing and changing. We like to see it more as a circle of something that's always moving. You can see there we've got motor skills, sensory, perception, executive functioning, and language. And again, they all work together, interlink, and is always moving. We've got another image there in the bottom right picture that can show children function in different situations according to the environment and maybe how much support they receive. So you can see there we've got about routine, sensory overload, special interests, stimming, non-verbal, and again, this can move all the time. So in some environment or a particular stage, in your child's life, they may be non-verbal. It doesn't mean that this is how they will stay forever and always. It will be something they move through, and they go through different stages. Again, in terms of special interests, a child may have a special interest that they have forever and they develop and grow with, but equally that interest can change and they may find a new one and move on from that. So yeah, just please keep that in mind, that it's something that will always be changing.
And here we have two quotes from autistic people. So, the National Autistic Society spoke to several autistic people about the positive aspects about being autistic. And please, can you pause the video now and have a read of these quotes? Because it is really interesting for us to hear what it is like from their point of view. And then just thinking about the strengths and the positive aspects of being autistic. So, an autistic person might be have like attention to detail because they have the hypersensitivity and are visual learners. Or they might be highly skilled in a particular area, often from their specific interests. They might have a tendency to be more logical because they might present with more structured thinking. An autistic person might also be more honest and truthful from their literal interpretations of events, or they might have really great problem solving skills because of their focus on details. They might have really good memory skills from hypersensitivity and being a visual learner. They might also be presenting with hyper empathy. So they're feeling empathy very intensely. And when someone experiences firsthand the emotions of someone else in their environment, and they might be also presenting with hyperfocus, which is called monotropism. Hopefully, I said that correctly. I've left a link in the description where you can read more about it, if you like. And autistic people might also, and you might have heard of this before, they might present with justice sensitivity. So they have an increased sense of what is right and wrong. And yeah, so it's really interesting as well. And if you have a pause now and have a think of the strengths that your child is presenting with as well. Okay, so neurodiversity affirming practice. The way we see autism has changed recently. Before, with the medical model, it used to be seen as something that needed to be fixed or cured. However, now we have an understanding, we are understanding more that all our brains are different and we should be celebrating and accepting the differences. Autism isn't something that is wrong. As parents and professionals, we celebrate the difference and listen to those who are autistic. And you can find out more by going onto the hashtag actually autistic on Twitter or other social media.
Thank you, Mara. Um, Okay, so here we've got an example of what we sometimes refer to as a communication passport or my communication identity. It may be familiar to some of you, it may be new to others. And it's a really helpful tool that we encourage parents to use when your child may be starting nursery, starting school, or maybe, it can even be helpful for family members, for anyone that may be caring or being part of your child's life. Um, you can see there we've got name, and meaning, your accent, culture, languages, your child's interests, their form of communication, their love language. Here is me, maybe a photo, a picture. Um, things that may get lost in translation, favorite words, actions, and behaviors. We've got one to show you that is completed. Here it is. I hope it isn't too tricky to read. But yeah, it will give you some examples. So, for example, main forms of communication. Minimally verbal. Your child uses echolalia, points and pulls by the hand. Vocal stims, they may use sounds when they're stimming. You can see some of the examples there, but write this in your own language, in your own terms of whoever you're giving it to. Even using things like echolalia, that is, it can be quite a professional term. You can say, my child repeats words, write it in whatever way makes sense to you. We want you to just describe your child and use this as a helpful tool. For some of your children that may be beginning nursery or may have started nursery, you may have got like an all about me form or something similar. It comes in different forms, but really use it as a helpful tool to describe to a new person about your child, about what maybe how they might ask for help, and maybe it might be that they will um, uh, come and get the hand of a familiar adult, or it may be that they just pull a chair to the side and climb up and open a cupboard and find some biscuits or whatever it may be. But use it as a way to really describe your child and how they are in everyday life. And think of it as a positive tool rather than writing about maybe what your child can't do or what they need help with. Think about all of the things that they can do and how they do those things. It may be in a different way, but really describe that here and use it to help you and help your child.
Okay, so moving on to the autism assessment process. So, a referral to the child development team is first discussed with parents, and the child needs to be referred to speech and language therapy and either receive some therapy or they can be attending a nursery, a play group, or a children's centre's stay and play. And then the child development team holds a general assessment. It's an hour-long appointment for asking questions, physical assessment, and a developmental check. Then the child is put on a social communication assessment pathway. And then the parents and nursery or playgroup or school complete questionnaires. And then the child is either seen in a group assessment in clinic or offered a one-to-one assessment in clinic, or they carry out an assessment in nursery. And finally, they will hold a parent-only appointment for the conclusion. Then there is also an early bird course after the conclusion that parents can join. And just to mention that if you do not complete the questionnaires or do not return the questionnaires, the child will be discharged. We do have a YouTube video covering the entire autism assessment process in the Ealing Borough. I will link the YouTube video in the description as well, and it will be really helpful to have a watch of that. Okay, so and then just suggested reading and resources. So we run another workshop, as we've mentioned before, called Supporting Autistic Children and Children with Social Communication Differences. That is the part 2 of this workshop. So here we've gone over understanding autism, and then in the next workshop will be how you can actually help your child. And we will also be uploading that video onto our YouTube channel. And then just some websites that you can go on to. We've got the National Autistic Society. There's Top Tips on Managing Sensory Differences and Ambitious About Autism website. Like I said, I'm going to link all these in the description for you to have a look at. and again, some more suggested reading and resources. These will all be linked in the description. And I guess just to mention, actually, the reason why we do link reading and resources is, as Zoe has mentioned before, that there is a lot of websites with misleading information or incorrect information. So we really want you to go on the websites that we've recommended for you. And what to do whilst you wait. So we know that the waiting list for this child development team or the autism assessment is really long, and even the waiting list for speech and language therapy assessment or therapy is very long. So whilst you're waiting, you can attend our Fun and Learn group. It is a 5-week group which gives you practical tips and strategies that you can use each week for to develop your child's social interaction, play, and attention skills. It's running in a couple of children's centres. You can call the children's centre closest to yourself to book onto it. We're also running a Makaton sign time group. We're running this both online over Zoom at South Acton Children's Centre and at Hanwell's Children's Centre. And you can book using the emails on the poster. So in this group, it is also a 5-week course, and you can come along with your child and learn different Makaton signs each week that you can use at home with your child. So especially for the children that don't have a lot of language or have difficulty, as we've mentioned before, with expressing their emotions or communicating their needs, it is really helpful to use the Makaton signs.
Okay, and we also run ongoing workshops and groups as part of the Ealing Early Start SEND and Inclusion team, and of course alongside the Early Start Speech and Language team. So there's just a little description there. These are start that one again.
Yeah.
These are the workshops that we regularly deliver. So we've got one on successful toileting. So we can offer you some support and guidance around helping your child become toilet trained. We have one on sleep. Again, we know sleep can be a difficulty, so we really focus on how to support your child's sleeping pattern. And we've also got a workshop on understanding sensory differences. Again, we touched on sensory differences today, but this goes into a lot more detail. And then finally, we have a workshop on eating, so supporting your child with eating and meal times. We don't have any.
I'm messing up the slide, sorry.
It's
Can
all
you
right.
can you just go from
Start
the
again.
eating bit again? Just I think
Yeah.
the eating's fine.
And then we have an eating workshop. So again, focusing around supporting your child with eating and meal times. To find out the upcoming dates and times for you to attend these workshops, please email on the email there you can see, just to register your interest of what workshop you'd like to attend, and we will be able to inform you of the upcoming date. And then we have the workshops that we jointly deliver with speech and language team. So we've got visually supported communication. So again, really focusing on why we use visuals and how you can use them. We have a workshop on promoting positive behaviour. And today's workshop that you have watched on understanding autism and social communication differences. So that was part 1 that you have just watched. And then part 2, you will also be able to watch on supporting autistic children and children with social communication differences. But again, the emails are there to register your interest and book a place on any of these workshops. And finally, of the workshops, we also have the introduction to Makaton signing. This is delivered virtually and also in person. So again, if you want to email your interest to find out the upcoming date, and you can book a place.
Okay, and another thing you can do whilst you're waiting is you can get support via our speech and language therapy advice line. So we know that often you might have lots of questions, or you're unsure about something maybe that we've even covered in this workshop, or you want to know where your child is on the waiting list. We've got the advice line, the number is there. We're open on Monday to Friday from 1 to 4 p.m. And if you can't reach us via the advice line, you can always email us. The email is also there, and we try to get back to you as soon as possible. If you require an interpreter, we can always call back with an interpreter. So please do reach out to us if you are looking for any advice whatsoever. Okay, you can also head on to our speech and language therapy Facebook page. We post all our updates there, any workshops that we're running, any awareness weeks, or any kind of information. We usually post it onto our Facebook page. You can also get in touch with Contact Ealing. We've got their website there for you. Um, there's also the Ealing SEND Inclusion team, which we've provided the contact number and the website. There's the health visitors and school health team duty line. This is similar to our advice line. You can call them for any tips or advice that you need. We've got the Ealing Parenting Service. They can also provide support for an educational placement if your child is unable to be at home and is regarded as vulnerable. There's the Ealing Local Offer website, which basically has everything that is going on in different children's centres. That's a really good web page for you to have a look at. And then we've also got the Ealing Anchor Foundation. You can register on the website and attend their workshops and receive support from them. Here are also some useful websites and campaigns. As I mentioned before, it is best to look at reliable sources for information, because there are a lot of unreliable information out there. So you can head on to the Tiny Happy People BBC campaign website. We've got Hungry Little Minds, the Look, Say, Sing, Play campaign, and the Small Talk National Literacy Trust campaign.
Okay, so we are at the end. Thank you very much for watching, and we really hope you have found this useful.
We've put a link to a Google form survey in the description of this video. Please could you complete the 2-minute survey and let us know what you thought of the training. Your feedback means that we can continue making these videos and workshops and delivering them for free. So we really are grateful for your feedback. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.